It usually starts in a very ordinary way. A retiree walks into their bank on a quiet morning, maybe after breakfast, maybe after picking up a prescription. They withdraw a few $1,000s in cash. Nothing unusual. Maybe they do it again a few days later, then again the following week. To them, it feels responsible, careful, controlled. And then, months later, a letter arrives. Not a warning, not a question. A penalty. My name is Sarah, and on Sarah Miller Updates, I spend my time explaining things like this before they happen to you, not after. I have seen situations like this unfold quietly, without drama, and that is exactly why they are so dangerous. Because by the time people realize something went wrong, the system has already made its decision. If you are retired or helping someone who is, I want you to stay with me. Because what feels like normal banking behavior can sometimes trigger attention you never expected. Now, let me say this clearly before we go any further. The goal here is not to make you worried. The goal is awareness. Because in situations like this, awareness is often the only thing standing between a normal life and a very expensive mistake. Most people think banks are just holding your money, that they do not pay attention unless something clearly illegal is happening. That is not how the system works anymore. Behind the scenes, banks are required to follow rules set by the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, often called FinCEN, which is a government office that tracks suspicious financial activity. When certain patterns appear in your account, those patterns are flagged automatically by software before a human even looks at them. One of those triggers is something called a currency transaction report, which simply means the bank must report when cash transactions go above a certain threshold. But here is where people misunderstand the system. It is not just about one large transaction. It is about patterns. And this is the part most people stop paying attention to. Do not make that mistake. If someone withdraws or deposits money in smaller amounts repeatedly, especially in a way that looks like they are trying to stay below reporting thresholds, the system may interpret that as something called structuring. Structuring simply means breaking up transactions to avoid attention, even if that was never your intention. And once that label is applied, things can move very quickly. The IRS, which is the Internal Revenue Service, the agency that handles taxes, can issue penalties if they believe financial rules were intentionally avoided. In some cases, those penalties can reach thousands of dollars. Now, let me walk you through something I saw recently. A man named Robert, retired for about 5 years, was helping his daughter with a home renovation. He would withdraw cash every few days, $2,000 here, $3,000 there, just to keep things simple. He told me he thought he was being careful by not taking out too much at once. Months later, he received a notice questioning his activity. Now I want to be clear. I share stories like this to help you understand what this looks like in real life, not to identify any one person. Robert was not trying to hide anything. But the pattern, not the intention, is what triggered the system. And this is where many people feel blindsided, because they think, if I did nothing wrong, I have nothing to worry about. But the system does not start by asking what you meant. It starts by looking at what it sees. The first thing I keep hearing is this: if I keep each withdrawal under $10,000, I'm safe. That is not correct. The reporting system looks at patterns over time, not just single transactions. Multiple smaller withdrawals can draw more attention than one larger, clearly documented transaction. The next one I need to address sounds like this. This only applies to businesses, not regular retirees. That is also not true. These rules apply to individuals as well, especially when consistent cash activity appears outside of normal patterns. Another thing people say is, the bank would tell me if I was doing something wrong. Banks do not operate that way. They are required to report certain activity quietly. You are not notified in real time when something is flagged. And then there is this one. If the money is mine, I can move it however I want. You can access your money, yes, but how you move it can still trigger reporting rules, especially when it creates patterns that look unusual to automated systems. Now stay with me, because what I am about to explain next is where even careful people get caught. The hidden problem is not just withdrawals. It is inconsistency, switching between accounts, using cash for large expenses without clear records, signing documents quickly at the bank without understanding what is being reported. Even something as simple as letting someone else regularly deposit or withdraw money on your behalf can create patterns that raise questions. And here is something else people do not realize. Once a pattern is flagged, it does not reset immediately. The system continues watching for consistency. So even if you stop, the history remains part of the review. Let me share another situation. Maria, a widow in her early 70s, preferred using cash. She would withdraw smaller amounts every week for living expenses and to help her grandson with college costs. It felt normal to her. It felt controlled. Then her account activity was reviewed. Now I want to be clear. I share stories like this to help you understand what this looks like in real life, not to identify any one person. Maria had done nothing dishonest, but the pattern required explanation, and that process alone was stressful and time-consuming. And this is the part many people do not talk about. It is not just the financial risk. It is the feeling of not knowing what comes next. The waiting, the letters, the uncertainty. Plans get paused. Simple decisions feel heavier. And for many retirees, there is a quiet fear in the background about making a mistake they cannot easily fix. But here is what matters. You are not powerless in this situation. If you are someone who regularly withdraws cash for bills, groceries, or helping family, this applies to you right now. If you recently sold something, received a large amount, or are moving money between accounts, this applies to you. If you are managing finances for a parent or spouse, this applies to you as well. And here is the part I want you to stay for, because this is where you can protect yourself. First, keep your transactions consistent and documented. If you are moving money for a reason, make sure that reason is clear and can be explained if needed. Second, avoid breaking up transactions just to stay under a number. That pattern can create more attention, not less. Third, talk to your bank before making repeated cash movements. A simple conversation can sometimes prevent misunderstandings later. Fourth, keep records. Even simple notes about why money was withdrawn or deposited can make a difference if questions arise. Fifth, when something feels unclear, pause. Do not rush decisions involving your finances, and I need to say this clearly. There are scammers right now calling retirees, pretending to be from the IRS, saying things like, "Your account has been flagged. You must pay immediately to avoid penalties." That is not how the IRS works. They do not call demanding payment like that. Do not engage. Do not send money. Now, there is something else many people do not know. If you are a U.S. citizen or a green card holder, meaning you have the permanent right to live in the United States, and you are dealing with a situation that feels stuck or unclear, you can contact your congressional representative's Constituent Services Office. That is simply the local office of your elected official that helps people navigate federal agencies. Sometimes they can help move communication forward when things feel delayed. And remember this, you still have rights. You have the right to ask questions, the right to take your time before signing anything, the right to consult a professional before responding, and the right to understand exactly what is being asked of you. No system takes that away from you. I have seen many changes over the years. Policies shift, procedures tighten, but the people who stay informed, who stay steady, who take simple steps early, they are the ones who move through these situations with the least disruption. This moment, whatever it feels like, is not permanent, and you are not navigating it alone. My responsibility here is to make sure you see what is coming before it reaches you, not to alarm you, but to steady you. If you are dealing with something like this, or even if you just have a question about your situation, you can share it below. I read those comments carefully, and I do my best to respond in a way that actually helps. Take care of yourself, stay aware, and we will keep walking through this together.